Chapter 1: The Quiet Shape of Sundays. Michael Doulin had learned over time how to make a life very small without making it empty. He woke up at the same hour every morning, even on weekends, because his body no longer trusted the luxury of sleeping in. Coffee was brewed the same way, measured with a precision that suggested ritual rather than preference. He worked during the week, competently, quietly, without ambition. His co-workers described him as solid, which was accurate and deeply uninteresting. Sundays were different. On Sundays, Michael went to the cemetery. He parked in the same spot every week, beneath a maple tree that dropped leaves with an inconsistency he found faintly irritating. He brought no flowers. He had once, early on, but they wilted too quickly and felt like a performance. Instead, he brought himself, which felt honest. The headstone was small. 7 years old, did not require much granite. Michael sat on the grass beside it, never directly in front. He didn't like the symmetry of that. He talked out loud because silence made everything echo too much. "Well," he said this Sunday, settling down with a soft exhale, "your old man almost burned dinner last night. Again. You'd have told me it was fine and then fed it to the dog." He smiled briefly. His son had always been gentle like that, more patient than a child had any business being. The illness had taken so much from him: energy, time, normalcy. What it hadn't taken was his ability to comfort the people around him, which had always struck Michael as deeply unfair. 7 years old, and his body had simply stopped. Complications, the doctors said, as if that word softened the reality that a small, brave body had finally run out of strength. Michael clung to the fact that his son had passed in his sleep, breathing shallowly one moment and not at all the next. No fear, no pain at the end, just rest. Peace was the word Michael returned to when his thoughts grew sharp. His son was at peace now, in a better place if such places existed. And if they didn't, then at least free from the fight. Michael talked about his week, the neighbor who waved too enthusiastically, the absurd amount of time he'd spent fixing a cabinet that did not actually need fixing. He described the movie he'd watched alone on Friday night, offering commentary as if his son were sprawled beside him on the couch, interrupting with questions. He stayed for hours. No one bothered him. The cemetery staff had learned his schedule. His family had learned his boundaries. After his son died, everything collapsed slowly, like a building settling into its own ruins. The funeral had come and gone. Condolences thinned. Time continued with a cruelty that felt almost intentional. His wife hadn't survived the aftermath, not in the way marriages are expected to. Grief hollowed them out in opposite directions. Michael leaned inward, anchoring himself to routines, to the idea that functioning was a form of loyalty. His wife, however, found the world unbearable in its reminders. Every hallway, every laugh Michael allowed himself, every sign of the man their son might have grown into, it all felt like torture. Seeing Michael was seeing loss with a face. The divorce wasn't dramatic. No shouting, no accusations. Just two people sitting at opposite ends of a kitchen table, acknowledging that love could exist alongside an unbearable weight and still not be enough. In the end, separating was the last kindness they could offer each other. She moved across the country not long after. Michael helped her pack. He hugged her goodbye. He meant it when he told her he hoped she found peace. They didn't stay in touch. Years passed. Michael's life grew quieter, but not lonelier in a way that alarmed him. He kept busy. He fixed things that didn't need fixing. He filled shelves with books he only half-read. His identity hovered somewhere between who he had been and who he wasn't sure he was allowed to become. Sometimes he wondered if his ex-wife had found what she was looking for. Sometimes he imagined her happy, because imagining her unhappy felt selfish. He made peace with absence. Michael's family knew better than to intervene. They checked in without pressing, invited without insisting, loved without demanding proof. It was, he thought often, the most generous thing they could do. Silence, when chosen, could be a mercy. After the cemetery, Michael drove home, stopped for groceries, and debated, briefly, buying something indulgent. He settled for frozen lasagna, which felt appropriately non-committal. At home, he ate alone at the kitchen counter, standing. He watched the late afternoon light stretch across the floor and thought about nothing in particular. This was, he believed, a skill he had perfected. What Michael didn't know, couldn't have known, was that his carefully contained life was already developing cracks. Not the catastrophic kind, the inconvenient kind, the kind that didn't ask permission. Chapter 2: A Disruption in the Smallness. Michael's car did not break down in a dramatic way. There was no smoke, no grinding protest, no theatrical lurch to the side of the road. It simply refused to continue. The engine light blinked on as if apologizing, and the car rolled to a thoughtful, final stop in a parking lot Michael did not recognize. He sat there for a moment, hands still on the wheel, waiting for irritation to arrive. Didn't. That, more than the breakdown itself, unsettled him. Michael got out of the car and looked around. The lot belonged to a low brick building with a banner stretched across the front. Riverbend Community Center. Today, family open house. Balloons bobbed against the railing, defying gravity with cheerful persistence. Children's laughter leaked through open doors. Michael checked his phone. 1 bar of service. Naturally. He sighed, not angrily, but with the resigned patience of a man who had long ago stopped expecting days to behave. Inside the community center, the air smelled like coffee, disinfectant, and something sweetly artificial, cupcakes, maybe. Tables had been set up along the walls with pamphlets, flyers, and half-deflated enthusiasm. Parents clustered in uneven circles, talking too loudly. Children ran with the manic purpose of people who had been promised juice boxes. Michael stood just inside the doorway, immediately regretting every decision that had led him there. "Can I help you? Or are you planning to haunt the threshold?" The voice came from his left, warm, amused, entirely too present. Michael turned. The woman addressing him held a clipboard against her chest like a shield and wore a shirt that said volunteer in peeling block letters. She had dark hair pulled into a loose knot that suggested surrender rather than style, and a smile that didn't ask permission before existing. "I'm not haunting," Michael said automatically. "I broke down." Her eyebrow lifted. "Physically or emotionally?" He paused. "Car." "Oh good," she said. "I'm not qualified for the other one before noon." She extended a hand. "Clara." "Michael." He shook her hand briefly. He noticed her grip was firm but not aggressive, like she had learned the difference. "Let me guess," Clara said, glancing past him toward the parking lot. "Sedan. Neutral color. Looks reliable until it isn't." "Yes," Michael said, then frowned. "Is that a guess or—" "I volunteer here," she said. "Cars sense it. Something about joy in the building makes them nervous." Michael huffed despite himself. "That was almost funny," he said. "Give it time," Clara replied. "I improve with exposure." She pointed toward a row of folding chairs near a coffee station. "You're welcome to sit while you wait for help, or hide in the bathroom. That's popular today." Michael followed her before he could talk himself out of it. They sat. Or rather, she perched on the edge of a table while he took a chair, positioning himself carefully away from the chaos of children. Clara offered him coffee. He declined. She poured herself some and grimaced. "Still bad," she said, "but familiar, which is what we aim for." Michael watched a boy run past with a balloon sword, narrowly missing a startled grandmother. "Do you do this often?" he asked. "Volunteer." Clara shrugged. "I help run a few programs. After-school stuff. Adult literacy. Occasional crisis intervention involving glitter." "That sounds brave." "Desperate," she corrected lightly. "But yes, brave works too." A pause settled, not awkward, exactly, but noticeable. Michael felt the itch to retreat, to minimize his presence. He hadn't practiced this kind of conversation in years. People usually let him exist quietly at the edges. Clara did not. "So," she said, flipping a page on her clipboard she wasn't actually reading. "What brings you to Riverbend, Michael, who is not haunting?" "My car," he said again. "And poor planning." "Ah, a man after my own heart." She studied him, not rudely but thoroughly. Michael was aware, suddenly, of his posture, his clothes, the faint coffee smell clinging to him. He had the odd sensation of being seen without being evaluated. It made him uncomfortable. It also made him alert. "I don't usually come to places like this," he said. "I know," Clara replied. "You have a very passing through reluctantly energy." He smiled despite himself. "Is that bad?" "No," she said. "Just specific." Michael's phone buzzed weakly. A text from roadside assistance. "Delay. Technician rerouted." He sighed. "Well," Clara said, clapping her hands softly, "then you're stuck with us. There's banana bread in the back. It's aggressively moist. I don't—" "It's not optional," she said. "It's a liability issue. People wander in, break down, and leave hungry. Lawsuit waiting to happen." She stood and motioned for him to follow. Michael hesitated. Every instinct he had cultivated urged him to stay seated, to wait quietly, to minimize disruption. Instead, he stood. He followed Clara down a short hallway into a smaller room where the noise softened. She handed him a plate. "Sit," she said. He did. They ate in companionable quiet for a moment. The banana bread was, unfortunately, excellent. "You're not from around here," Clara said. "I am," Michael replied. "I just don't go out much." She nodded as if this made perfect sense. "People assume that's sad," she said. "Sometimes it's just accurate." Michael looked at her then. Really looked. "Do you assume that?" he asked. "No," she said. "I assume you've had reasons." The words landed gently. No pity. No curiosity sharpened into intrusion. Michael swallowed. "My son used to love places like this," he said before he could stop himself. Clara didn't react immediately. She didn't fill the silence. She let it exist. "Used to?" she asked softly. Michael exhaled. "He's gone." "I'm sorry," she said. And somehow it didn't sound like an ending. Michael nodded once. "Thank you." They sat quietly after that, the sounds of life continuing just beyond the walls. Michael felt something unfamiliar stir, not pain exactly, not hope, movement. When his phone buzzed again, technician en route, Michael stood. "I should go," he said. Clara smiled. "Probably." The banana bread loses its charm after the third bite. He hesitated. Thank you. For not making this worse. Anytime, she said. Break down here again. We're very consistent. Michael walked out with a strange sensation in his chest. His life had been small for a long time. It had not, until now, felt interrupted. Chapter 3, The Problem with Being Noticed. Michael did not think about Clara for the rest of the day. This was not because she hadn't left an impression. It was because Michael had become very good at placing impressions gently to the side, like objects he wasn't ready to examine. He went home, reheated leftover lasagna, washed the same mug twice because he forgot he'd already done it, and went to bed at precisely the hour that made tomorrow feel manageable. He slept poorly anyway. The following Wednesday, Michael stopped at the grocery store on his way home from work, because Wednesday was grocery day and because deviating from routine felt like tempting fate. He moved through the aisles with the quiet efficiency of a man who knew exactly what he needed and exactly how long it should take. He was reaching for a box of pasta when someone said, behind him, "If you pick the thin spaghetti, I will judge you silently but intensely." Michael froze. He did not turn around immediately. He let the words register, let the voice settle into recognition. When he did turn, there she was, leaning against her cart, arms crossed, mouth tilted with unapologetic amusement. "Clara, you followed me," he said. "I absolutely did not," she replied. "I ambushed you organically. There's a difference." "This is my grocery store," Michael said, glancing around as if expecting witnesses. "I've been coming here for years." Clara nodded. "Bold of you to assume the universe respects seniority." He stared at her for a moment, caught between annoyance and something dangerously close to relief. "What are you doing here?" he asked. "Buying food," she said, "like a person who eats." I know what you meant," she smiled. "I live 3 blocks away. Riverbend isn't a magical pocket dimension. It's a building." "That's disappointing," Michael said. "I liked the mystery." She pushed her cart forward. "Walk with me. We can debate pasta shapes like adults." He hesitated. He did not normally walk grocery aisles with strangers he had met during mechanical failure. He also did not normally feel this aware of his own heartbeat in the pasta section. Michael followed her. They argued lightly about sauce absorption. Clara accused him of being a purist. Michael accused her of chaos. Neither accusation felt particularly threatening. "So," she said, selecting a box decisively, "how's the car?" "Alive," Michael said. "Traumatized, but functional." "Good," she replied. "I'd hate to think our meeting was a one-time breakdown." The words lingered longer than they should have. They moved to produce. Clara picked up an avocado, frowned at it, put it back. "Too hopeful," she said. Michael snorted before he could stop himself. She glanced at him. "There it is. You laugh like someone who isn't used to it." He shrugged. "It surprises me sometimes." "Does it bother you?" she asked, casual but not careless. "That I keep running into you?" Michael considered the question seriously. "No," he said finally. "It bothers me that I don't mind." She smiled, softer this time. "That's fair." They reached the checkout lanes together and then, almost instinctively, stopped. "Well," Clara said, gesturing between them, "this is the part where normal people exchange numbers or pretend they don't know how phones work." Michael felt the old reflex tighten in his chest. Retreat. Minimize. Exit gracefully. He surprised himself. "Coffee," he said. "Sometime." She brightened immediately, as if she had expected this all along. "Yes, good. I know a place that doesn't pretend burnt beans are a personality." They exchanged numbers. Michael typed hers in carefully, as if the phone might misinterpret the importance of the moment. When they parted in the parking lot, Michael felt something unfamiliar trail after him all the way home. Anticipation. It unsettled him more than loneliness ever had. They met for coffee on Saturday morning. Michael arrived early because he always did. He sat at a small table by the window and watched people pass, reminding himself that this was just coffee. Not a commitment, not a turning point, just caffeine in public. Clara arrived 10 minutes late and unapologetic. "I underestimated my own optimism," she said, sliding into the chair opposite him. "Traffic and I are not on speaking terms." She ordered without looking at the menu. Michael noticed this, filed it away without knowing why. Conversation flowed easily and then stopped abruptly, like a river hitting an unexpected dam. Michael found himself measuring his words, editing before speaking. Clara noticed. "You do that thing," she said. "What thing?" "Where you decide whether a thought is worth the oxygen before letting it out." Michael stiffened. "Is that a problem?" "Not a problem," she said. "Just a habit, probably earned." He looked at his hands. They were steady. They always were. "My life is quiet," he said. "On purpose." "I get that," Clara replied. "Quiet can be a relief. It can also be a hiding place," he said before he could stop himself. She watched him closely, not intrusively. "Which is it for you?" Michael thought of Sundays, of the cemetery, of the careful way he had built walls that kept everything manageable. "Both," he admitted. They sat with that. Clara leaned back. For what it's worth, I'm not here to dismantle anything you're not ready to move. That's reassuring, Michael said. And disappointing, she added. I'm very good at mild chaos. He smiled. I noticed. They talked about small things after that. Movies, food, the strange intimacy of shared silence. When they stood to leave, Michael felt the familiar pull of withdrawal tug at him. Clara touched his arm lightly, not possessive, just present. I had a good time, she said. So did I, Michael replied. He meant it. As he walked home, Michael realized something that startled him with its clarity. He had been noticed, not observed, not pitied, not left alone out of politeness, seen. And the problem with being noticed, Michael knew, was that it made disappearing much harder. Chapter 4. Ghosts don't need permission. Michael didn't intend to tell Clara anything significant. He told himself this firmly as they walked along the river path a week later. Coffee replaced by motion. Conversation replaced by the easy rhythm of shared steps. The path curved gently, bordered by early spring stubbornness. Buds refusing to hurry, grass unsure of its commitment. It felt appropriate. This is where I come when my head gets loud, Clara said, hopping lightly over a crack in the pavement. It's not quiet exactly, but it's honest noise. Michael nodded. I usually go places where nothing talks back. She smiled. That tracks. They walked for a while without speaking. Michael had learned to appreciate silence as a shared thing, not something that needed filling. Clara didn't rush it. She had a talent for letting moments breathe. Eventually, she said, You don't have to answer this. He glanced at her. That sentence is rarely true. She laughed softly. Fair. Then, feel free to deflect creatively. Always. What did your son love most? The question landed gently, but directly. No build-up. No apology for asking. Michael stopped walking. He didn't look at her right away. He looked at the river, moving steadily forward, unconcerned with witnesses. Dinosaurs, he said, specifically the ones with feathers. He thought it was unfair that people ignored that part. Clara's face softened, not with pity, but interest. He sounds like he had strong opinions. He did, Michael said. For someone who spent so much time tired, he was remarkably passionate. They resumed walking. He was sick most of his life, Michael continued, surprising himself. Not always visibly, but it was there. We learned early how to measure good days. Clara listened. She didn't interrupt, didn't offer comparisons or reassurances. When he died, Michael said, I thought everything would break all at once. Instead, it was gradual, like erosion. He swallowed. My marriage didn't survive it. I don't blame either of us. Grief just rearranged what we could see. Clara nodded slowly. Loss does that. It changes the furniture in your head. He glanced at her, startled. That's an oddly accurate description. I've had practice, she said. He waited. She didn't elaborate immediately. My husband died 5 years ago, Clara said finally. Car accident. Very sudden. No time to prepare. Just gone. I'm sorry, Michael said. I know, she replied. And thank you. It wrecked me in loud ways at first, then quieter ones. I moved, changed jobs, tried to outpace it. Did it work? She smiled wryly. Grief is very fast. They walked on. What brought you to the community center? Michael asked. I needed to be useful, Clara said, and surrounded by life that didn't ask me to explain myself. Kids don't care about your backstory. They just want snacks and honesty. Michael smiled faintly. They reached a bench overlooking the water and sat. The late afternoon sun warmed the air between them. I visit my son every Sunday, Michael said. I talk to him about nothing important. That sounds important, Clara said. He nodded. It keeps me grounded. Reminds me that love doesn't disappear just because the person does. She looked at him then, really looked. You don't hide your grief very well. Michael huffed. I try. I know, she said. But you also don't let it make you small. He blinked. I thought I did. No, Clara said gently. You let it make you careful. There's a difference. The words settled somewhere deep. As they stood to leave, Michael felt the familiar pull of fear, of proximity, of meaning. He almost stepped back. Instead, he said, Would you like to come with me sometime? To the cemetery. Clara didn't hesitate. Yes. The simplicity of her answer startled him. They walked back toward the street, the river behind them, still moving forward. Michael realized something then. Ghosts didn't need permission to exist. But maybe, just maybe, neither did the living. Chapter 5, The Shape of Almost. Michael told himself he wasn't nervous. He had prepared for Clara's visit to the cemetery with the same careful attention he applied to everything else. He went earlier in the morning to clear leaves from the stone, even though no one but him would notice. He wore a jacket instead of a sweater because jackets felt more neutral. He rehearsed what he might say and then deliberately abandoned every version. Nervousness implied expectation. This was just honesty in a shared space. Clara arrived on time, which Michael noticed immediately. She parked a respectful distance away and waited for him before walking in. She wore dark jeans, flat boots, and a scarf she twisted in her hands when she thought he wasn't looking. "Thank you for inviting me," she said quietly. He nodded. "Thank you for coming." They walked together through the rows of stones, the air cool and still. Michael felt the familiar internal shift, the way his thoughts narrowed, the way the world softened around the edges. This place had always belonged to him and his son. Letting someone else step into it felt like crossing an invisible line. He stopped beside the headstone. "This is him," Michael said. He said his son's name aloud, carefully, like placing something fragile between them. Clara crouched to read the stone. She didn't touch it. She didn't ask questions right away. "He would have liked you," Michael added after a moment, surprised by the certainty of it. Clara looked up at him. "I'm honored." They sat on the grass. Michael talked, as he always did, about his week, about work, about a neighbor's dog, about the way the seasons felt different now. He found himself explaining things he usually left unsaid, like how Sundays had become anchors rather than reminders. Clara listened. When he finished, she said, "Would it be okay if I said hello?" Michael swallowed. "Yes." She spoke softly, introducing herself, telling his son about the community center, about banana bread and stubborn adults and the river path. She didn't perform grief. She didn't borrow his. She simply acknowledged that love had been here and still was. Michael felt something loosen inside him, not painfully, but enough to breathe. When they left, neither of them spoke for a while. Later that afternoon, they went to lunch. Not planned, just adjacent enough to feel inevitable. They talked about inconsequential things with a tenderness that surprised Michael. The weight of the morning lingered, but it didn't crush the lightness that followed. Over the next few weeks, they slipped into something undefined. They met for coffee again, then dinner, then long walks that ended reluctantly. Clara came over once, bringing soup and unsolicited opinions about Michael's bookshelf organization. He countered by pointing out that she alphabetized fiction by author but nonfiction by mood, which she claimed was intuitive. "I don't see the problem," she said. "The problem," Michael replied, "is that you're comfortable with chaos." "I'm comfortable with survival," she said lightly. "Chaos is just the garnish." He laughed, genuinely, and felt the echo of it stay. Still, something hovered between them. Michael felt it most clearly on a Tuesday night when Clara leaned against his kitchen counter, close enough that he could feel her warmth. They were talking about nothing, about a movie she loved, about a job he almost took years ago, and then she stopped. "Michael," she said. He looked at her. "This feels like something," she continued, "but you're holding it like it might disappear if you touch it wrong." His chest tightened. "I don't know how to want things anymore without worrying about the cost." She nodded. "That makes sense. I don't want to hurt you," he said. "I know," she replied. "But avoiding joy because it might leave is still a kind of hurt." The words weren't sharp. They weren't an ultimatum. They were true. Michael stepped back, not physically but internally. He felt the old defenses rise, familiar and efficient. "I need time," he said. Clara's expression didn't close. It softened. "I'm not asking you to be ready," she said. "I'm asking you not to disappear." He didn't answer right away. When she left that night, the quiet in the house felt different. Not safe. Empty. Michael didn't call the next day. Or the one after that. He worked late. He fixed a shelf that didn't wobble. He told himself he was doing the right thing by slowing everything down. On Sunday, he went to the cemetery alone. He sat beside his son's grave longer than usual, hands folded, eyes unfocused. "I'm afraid," he admitted aloud. "And I don't know who I am if I'm not careful." The wind moved through the trees. The world did not offer solutions, but something inside him shifted, not closure, not certainty. Permission. Michael stood, brushed grass from his jeans, and took out his phone. He didn't rehearse the message. "I don't want to disappear. I'm just learning how to stay." He sent it before he could change his mind. His phone buzzed almost immediately. "Good. I make soup on Thursdays. You can come help or you can sit and supervise badly." Michael smiled. The shape of almost, he realized, was still a shape. And sometimes it was enough to start with that. Chapter 6, What We Owe the Living. Thursday arrived with rain. Not the dramatic kind. No thunder, no urgency. But a persistent, needling drizzle that made the world feel smaller and more deliberate. Michael stood in his kitchen staring at the clock, jacket already on, keys in his hand, as if the extra minute of stillness might reveal whether this was a mistake. Soup, he reminded himself. Not a declaration. Not a turning point. Just soup. Clara lived in a second-floor apartment above a bookstore that smelled faintly of paper and dust and cinnamon from a cafe next door. When Michael knocked, the door swung open immediately, as if she'd been waiting behind it the entire time. "You're early," she said. "I didn't want to be late," he replied. She grinned. "I respect that deeply. Come in." Her apartment was lived in a way Michael's wasn't. Shoes near the door, mismatched mugs on the counter, a throw blanket that had clearly given up on being folded properly. There were plants, some thriving, some barely hanging on. "I water them based on vibes," Clara said, following his gaze. "It's not science." "I can tell," Michael said, smiling. They cooked together without choreography. Clara chopped vegetables aggressively. Michael stirred with unnecessary focus. They talked around things: work, books, a mutual dislike of overly inspirational podcasts. The rain tapped against the windows with quiet insistence. At some point, Clara said, "You've been quieter tonight." Michael considered lying. He had a well-developed skill set for that. "I keep thinking about what I owe," he said instead. She glanced at him, knife paused mid-chop. "That sounds heavy." "It is," he said, "and vague. I'm still working on clarity." She resumed chopping. "You don't owe me anything, if that's where this is headed." "I know," he said quickly. "That's part of the problem." They finished cooking and sat at the small table by the window. The soup was good, warm, grounding, uncomplicated. Michael felt his shoulders drop inch by inch. "I used to think," he said, "that surviving meant not asking for more. That wanting happiness again would somehow diminish what I lost." Clara listened, spoon resting against her bowl. "But lately," he continued, "it feels like I'm withholding something, not just from myself, from the world." She nodded. "Grief can convince you that stillness is loyalty." He looked at her sharply. "Yes. It's not," she added gently. "It's just one way of coping." Michael exhaled. "I don't know how to be the person I was before." "You don't have to be," Clara said. "You just have to be someone who's still breathing." The words settled between them, simple and unadorned. After dinner, they washed dishes side by side. Michael noticed the ease of it, the shared space, the lack of pressure. When he turned to hand her a towel, their hands brushed. The contact was brief. Intentional restraint hovered like a third presence. "I'm scared," Michael said quietly. Clara met his eyes. "I know. I'm scared that if I let myself love you," he continued, voice steady despite the words, "I'll be tempting fate." She dried her hands and leaned against the counter. "Michael, fate doesn't need temptation. It shows up whether we invite it or not." He laughed softly. "You're very calm about this." "I'm not," she said. "I'm just practiced." They stood there, the space between them charged but not urgent. "I don't want to rush you," Clara said. "But I also won't pretend I don't care. Both things can be true." Michael nodded. "I'm trying to learn how to live with that." Later, walking home through the rain, Michael felt something shift. Not dramatically, not all at once, but enough to notice. On Sunday, he went to the cemetery. The sky was overcast, the air cool. Michael sat beside the headstone, hands folded loosely in his lap. "I met someone," he said aloud. "She makes soup, and she doesn't flinch." He smiled faintly. I think it's okay if I'm happy again. Not instead of missing you, just alongside it." The wind moved through the trees. Leaves whispered. Michael felt no sign, no revelation. But he felt lighter. That evening, he called Clara. "Hi," she said. "Did you survive the weekend?" "Yes," he replied. "And I wanted to tell you something before I talk myself out of it." She waited. "I don't know what this will become," he said. "But I want to keep choosing it. I want to stay." There was a pause on the line. Not uncertainty, emotion. "Good," Clara said. "I'm very bad at pretending people don't exist." Michael laughed. "I've noticed." When they hung up, Michael stood in his quiet house and realized something important. The past would always matter, but so would the living. And for the first time in a long while, Michael felt ready to honor both. Chapter 7. Choosing the risk. Michael learned, slowly, that staying was an action. Not a declaration, not a dramatic gesture. Staying was answering messages when his instinct said to wait. It was making plans further than a day ahead. It was allowing himself to anticipate something without immediately calculating how it might end. He practiced in small ways. He went to Clara's soup nights without supervision duties, letting himself sit at her kitchen table while she cooked, occasionally stealing vegetables and receiving exaggerated reprimands. "Those carrots were innocent," she said one evening, smacking his hand lightly with a spoon. "They knew the risk," he replied. She smiled at him like that was exactly the right answer. They didn't label anything. Michael was grateful for that. Labels implied permanence, and permanence still made his chest tighten. Instead, they accumulated moments, movie nights, walks, shared silences that felt companionable rather than guarded. Still, the fear didn't disappear. It waited. The first real test came unexpectedly, as most meaningful things did. Michael's sister called on a Tuesday afternoon while he was fixing a leaky faucet that had, until that moment, been functioning perfectly well. "She's getting married," his sister said without preamble. Michael blinked. "Who?" "Claire. To Mark. They set the date for September." "Oh," Michael said. He hadn't thought about his ex-wife in months, not in any focused way. She existed now as a distant fact, something he wished well without engaging. "They want you there," his sister continued. "Both of them." Michael sat down on the edge of the tub. "I don't know if—" "I know," she said gently. "But they asked, and I told them I'd pass it along." After they hung up, Michael stared at the faucet. Forgotten. That night, he told Clara. They were sitting on his couch, knees almost touching, a shared blanket draped over them more out of habit than need. "She's moved on," Michael said. "That's good." Clara nodded. Of course. And I don't know how I feel about being part of that world again, he added. The one where things continue. Clara turned to face him fully. Do you want to go? I don't know, he admitted. Part of me feels like attending would mean closing something, and another part of me is afraid that closing it means forgetting. She reached for his hand. Those aren't the same thing. I know, he said. Intellectually. She squeezed his fingers. Grief isn't an exam. You don't have to prove anything. The wedding invitation sat on his kitchen counter for weeks. Michael picked it up, set it down, moved it back. He imagined himself there, smiling politely, making small talk, feeling like a ghost among the living. He imagined not going. Both options felt heavy. What surprised him was how often he imagined Clara beside him. One evening, as they washed dishes together, Michael said, "Would you come with me?" She looked up. To the wedding? Yes. She didn't answer immediately. She dried her hands, folded the towel, and leaned against the counter. Only if you want me there, she said. Not as armor. Not as proof. Michael met her eyes. I want you there because I want to share my life, even the parts that scare me. Her expression softened into something almost reverent. Then yes, she said. I'll come. The wedding was held on a clear September afternoon, sunlight filtering through white linens and laughter. Michael stood beside Clara, her hand steady in his, and felt the familiar ache of memory rise and pass. He did not break. Later, during a slow song, Clara leaned into him. You're doing great, she whispered. He exhaled. I didn't think I could. You can, she said. You are. On the drive home, Michael felt exhausted in a way that was not emptying but earned. I don't regret going, he said. Clara smiled. Good. That night, as they sat together in the quiet of his house, Michael felt something settle. I want to be clear, he said. She turned toward him. Okay. I still visit my son every Sunday, he said. That won't change. I wouldn't want it to, she replied. And there will be days when I pull back, he continued. When the world feels sharp again. I know, she said. But I don't want to pull away, he said. Not from you. Clara reached up, cupping his face gently. Michael, she said. Loving someone after loss isn't a betrayal. It's a continuation. The words undid something inside him. He kissed her then. Not urgently, not hesitantly. A choice. Promise to be present. Later, lying beside her, Michael stared at the ceiling and thought about the strange, brave act of choosing the risk. Life would always be fragile. That, he realized, was not a reason to refuse it. Chapter 8. Life still happening. Michael still went to the cemetery every Sunday. Some things did not need reinvention. What changed was how the rest of the day unfolded afterward. On the first Sunday Clara joined him, she brought a thermos of coffee and two mismatched mugs she claimed were emotionally supportive. She waited while he talked. She listened without absorbing the weight as her own. When he finished, she didn't rush him away or try to redirect the moment into something lighter. She simply stood with him. I'll give you space whenever you need it, she said as they walked back to the car. And I'll stand beside you when you don't. Michael nodded. That felt like love. Not rescue. Not replacement. Just presence. Over time, his life expanded in ways so subtle they felt accidental. He stayed longer at dinners with his family. He laughed more easily, the sound no longer surprising him when it escaped. He let Clara reorganize his bookshelf despite the chaos theory implications. He learned that grief did not resent joy, it simply demanded honesty. One evening, months later, Michael came home to find Clara sitting cross-legged on his living room floor surrounded by photo albums. I hope this is okay, she said, holding one up. I found these in the hall closet. They felt lonely. Michael sat beside her, heart steady. They looked through them together. Baby pictures, hospital rooms, birthday hats worn crooked, his son grinning with an 4 taped to his arm. Triumphant anyway. Clara didn't cry. She smiled at the right places. She laughed when Michael told stories he hadn't realized he remembered so clearly. He was loved, she said simply. Yes, Michael replied. He still is. That night, Michael realized something important. Love was not a finite resource. It didn't divide. It multiplied. Life didn't ask him to choose between grief and joy. It allowed both. Spring rolled into summer. Clara brought him into her world with the same respect she had always shown his. He attended community center fundraisers, awkward but willing. He learned children's names. He became Michael with the good listening face. You do know they can sense fear, Clara teased once as a group of kids circled him expectantly. I've faced worse, he replied solemnly. Glitter. She laughed, loud and unguarded. There were still difficult days. Days when Michael woke with the old heaviness pressing against his ribs. Days when a passing boy with dark hair caught him off guard. Days when silence felt too loud again. On those days, Clara didn't try to fix anything. She made tea. She sat nearby. She reminded him, gently, that pulling back didn't mean pulling away. And Michael, in turn, learned how to reach out. One quiet evening, Nearly a year after their first coffee, Michael stood at the kitchen counter while Clara read at the table. "I've been thinking," he said. "That's rarely harmless," she replied without looking up. He smiled. "I want to move forward, not rush, just intentionally." She set the book aside. "Tell me what that looks like to you." "It looks like planning," he said. "Long term. It looks like choosing instead of reacting." She studied him carefully. "And what are you choosing?" Michael met her gaze. "You. This. A life that isn't defined by what I lost, but by what I still carry." Clara's breath caught. Not dramatically, but honestly. "Okay," she said. "I'm here." Later, lying beside her, Michael thought about the years he'd spent surviving by shrinking, about how silence had once felt like the only safe place. He understood now that silence had taught him how to listen, and listening had taught him how to love. On a Sunday not long after, Michael sat at the cemetery alone again. Clara had offered to come. He had told her this one was his. He spoke to his son as he always did, about work, about life, about the woman who made soup and didn't flinch. "I'm happy," he said aloud. "Not instead of missing you, just alongside it." He stood, brushed off his jeans, and felt no guilt. Life was still fragile, but it was also still happening. And Michael Doulin, father, husband once, survivor always, was no longer watching it pass. He was living.